We're joined by US Secretary of Trade for Agriculture and Foreign Agricultural Affairs, Ted McKinney. Ted, thank you very much for joining us. At the moment, Ted, the US Farm Bill is going through Congress, and in parallel with that, the Common Agricultural Policy is undergoing reform in the EU. Is there anything that the US can learn from the EU? Are you looking to the EU for inspiration on changes to the Farm Bill?
I would say less than more. You always want to scope what other countries are doing with their programs like that. And I think there's a lot of similarity in the dedication to good stewardship practices and cost sharing and help on preserving the environment, addressing climate change, that kind of thing. But I would say in this case, the Farm Bill has, from 4 years ago, was a pretty good Farm Bill. They're not looking at a lot of changes here. So I would say you're always looking at your friends and your neighbors across the pond or wherever it might be. But I think this one is more modeled after and modifications made from the last U.S. Farm Bill than it might be pulling from other like or similar programs.
And what about on the EU side? Do you think is there anything we can learn from the US Farm Bill?
Well, I would say the one thing that's been very successful, this may surprise a lot of your viewers, but our farmers would just as soon not be supported at all by the government. Ideally, they'd like for markets to determine that and just be out of any or at least out of most support. And that's why several years ago when crop insurance was introduced, which farmers like my own family purchase, that is wildly successful. That has proven to be a very, very good program. It isn't yet self-sustaining, but that's the intent, is to get it there so that the government, and like insurance programs, it's self-sufficient. Some would use it, some would not. It should pay for itself. And I think that is very popular with the U.S. farmer. I would say other programs that are very popular are the stewardship, sustainability, environmental health kinds of programs, also cost shared. So I don't see major changes, just tweaks or something close to that would be, I would say, where the U.S. Farm Bill is headed.
On the CAP side, when it comes to reform, we know that there's going to be a lot greater emphasis on environmental measures post-2020 in light of tackling climate change. How much responsibility do you place and does the US place on agriculture in reducing emissions?
Well, I don't think it's built in, perhaps like it is or will be in the revised CAP. But I think your viewers should know that never mind what happened at the Paris Accords, our farmers are still very driven to do right by the environment. Our farmers, your farmers, have always been the world's first and original environmentalists, and they sustain that. Nobody wants poor quality of water or air or so forth. So those efforts continue on, whether there's a program or not. Sometimes it's because it's the right thing to do. Sometimes it's the cost share program. But I think the dedication to that is very strong and will continue to stay strong for a long time. It's a heritage of the land, a care for the land kind of theme. So in a sense, that might be something where there's similarities, but there's also a lot of differences too. I would also say that a lot of folks would say, I think many people do not understand the CAP. There's a view, probably not unlike the US's view, that there's heavy subsidies. There's not heavy subsidies in the US Farm Bill. That largely went away in 1996 Farm Bill. And so crop insurance, lots and lots of cost share came in. So I suspect the US would like to see the CAP reduced. But they're not going to mess in your backyard, and so have at it.
They would like to see see it reduced down in Europe.
Well, I think our farmers want markets to operate, and when markets are operating freely, you just get rid of subsidies like that. Our farmers would love to get rid of just about all subsidies. They prefer not to have it. But competition around the world, still there's support of one level or another, and so we are where we are.
Agriculture often gets intense criticism on the climate front, on emissions, for its action to reduce carbon emissions from agriculture. In the US, is it a similar situation? Does agriculture take a lot of slack? Do farmers take a lot of slack for their action or inaction on climate change?
There is some. I think what I've heard, and it's not shrill, I would say, is livestock emissions. But I would say agriculture is still very much revered. I mean, farmers are held in very high regard. The trust and the believability of a farmer and a veterinarian are among the highest when someone's being asked about agriculture. So I would say there can be some of that, but I don't think it's quite as pronounced as it is here. I think a lot of that too is because there's so much work been going on with that. For example, a great deal of our cropping is no-till or at best minimum till. Well, the less you disturb the soil, you have greater carbon sequestration. A very, very good thing. Many of our larger dairies have moved very much into a capturing of that waste and a conversion into compressed natural gas. So there's a lot of effort to use life cycle analysis to bring any emissions down, whether it's waste or anything else. And I would say the trend line is up and very positive in that regard. So some noise, but I don't think it's pronounced.
Because as last June, when the US announced that it would be removing itself from the Paris Agreement, does President Donald Trump also have? Does he also believe in the power of agriculture to reduce emissions and the ability of agriculture to reduce emissions? Is that central to him, to his ethos?
I can't speak for the president. I can tell you this, movements toward doing the right thing by the environment have remained steady and continue. So it's not like the U.S. just checked off and said, we're out and we're not pursuing these things anymore. Nothing of the sort. Lots and lots of efforts on the farm, in our food processing industry, in many industries continue very aggressively. So setting aside what the president's decision might, things continue in a very happy fashion, at least in my view.
On the trade side, Mr. Undersecretary, Irish beef got access to the US back in January 2015.
Right.
And although earlier this year the amount of exports had increased about 30%, so about 900 tons of Irish beef made its way over to the US. And although it's developing, it's at a slow pace.
Right.
What's your view on that? Why is it that it's kind of a slow burner?
Sure. Well, I think there's two or three phenomena. First, it just takes a while to ramp up. Americans love U.S. beef, and our beef producers have been ramping up. But I'll tell you, we have gone out of our way to enhance and make room for and allow for and support the incoming Irish beef. So I think it's natural forces. There's been some competition from other countries as well. So what I've shared with your beef producers at the event here is stay the course. There's a market there for them, but if anything, we have enhanced the opportunity for them to have some market access. No blockage of any sort at all by us.
Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, our Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Michael Creed, was out in the US last year on a trade mission, and there were some further developments in terms of the marketing of Irish beef. That it's marketed as grass-based, and the unique qualities of Irish beef will now be recognised in the US. The Department of Agriculture in the US approved that.
Right.
So will the retailers just kind of get, in line on that? Will it just take a matter of time?
I think it'll take a matter of time. There is certainly a clientele that wants grass-fed. I would say the predominance of the American diet is they want grain-fed. But for that segment that wants grass-fed and is requesting it, I think therein is a very good opportunity for Irish beef. But I think this is just a matter of timing. It's a matter of when, not if.
How much time would you say?
Oh gosh, I'm not into the retailing community enough to say, but I would say that it's going to continue to be steady. And again, we embrace that. We are a very open country for these kinds of competitors. I've always believed trade is a two-way street. If I win and you lose, that's not a very long or strong relationship. Hence the work by our ag marketing group at USDA to give them that classification that might give them a leg up.
It's also hoped that US access for Irish sheep meat will be on the horizon as well over the coming years. Do American consumers know what sheep meat is? Do they eat lamb?
They do, and I think it's growing slowly. There's just been such history with beef, pork, and poultry in any different order, and less so lamb. But no, the diet for lamb is growing. It's pretty darn good. And so I anticipate that small ruminant rule to be coming to closure pretty soon. And I think that would then allow access for Ireland to send some lamb over.
On the dairy side as well, it is more positive. There are more exports going out. So there is an appetite out there for Irish dairy products.
Yes.
How do Americans view Irish dairy?
Well, I'm not an expert on the branding, but I know some of the brands. I mean, Glanbia, my wife and I have purchased Glanbia before. So clearly it fits well in the mix. And again, I want to say this is one of the issues that is so important about trade. We continue to be very receptive to free, fair, and reciprocal trade. Hence the decision on Irish beef. Hence the decision and practice we have on Irish dairy. But it is decidedly very different in other parts of the world, and that's why you're seeing what I call this right sizing on trade. Less so with Ireland, but with other countries around the world, because why should we open up the way we do to other countries' food and ag products, only to find that there's not reciprocal receptivity from the other side? And that's what I think is being addressed here. I think with Ireland, so far so good.
Ted, you were in Brussels as well this week.
Yes.
You were over there for talks, and what's your take on the Brexit situation at the moment? I know there hasn't been a whole lot of development since over the last 2-3 years now. So what do you think there are opportunities for Ireland between US-Irish trade negotiations post-Brexit? Are there opportunities there for us?
Yeah. That's a tough one. As you know, we have not taken a position on whether Brexit's the right thing or the wrong thing. That's an autonomous decision that needs to be made by the country or the countries themselves. What I'm reading about is there's some tension. But just as I wouldn't want folks to get involved in the machinations of US government, I'm going to refrain from passing judgment on that. I will say, though, we are open and ready to do business with whatever entity has that negotiating desire. So I'm hoping we have some good discussions with Ireland today. I think we can build on what we already have. If UK decides to go ahead and Brexit, most certainly we would want to interface with them. But that doesn't mean we want to do harm to anybody else. So it all depends on how the agreement with the EU settles. Whether or not the UK goes through with the Brexit, my sense is that it probably will happen. It's what I'm hearing. And then it's just a matter of working with those countries that want to work with us.
Finally, Ted, you have some Irish roots, I suppose, with a name like McKinney. You weren't going to be too far away. Based in Northern Ireland, is it some farming roots from Northern Ireland?
In fact, both my paternal side and maternal side, Scotch-Irish, spent some time in the northern part of the island, and made their way to the U.S., well, centuries ago. But we know the roots. Sometime I want to get back and get up there because we have pretty good genealogy. So hopefully we'll have that chance to get up and see the homeland.
Well, thank you very much, Ted. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.